The stop on my side will keep it from going too far that way, and the stop on your side keep it from coming too far this way. So I always use a plunge starter, so I'll set it to the depth, and then I'll go off one side, down the other side, and make sure that you have a block over here to support it. You don't want to come out here and have it drop, because it'll take a nice big chunk out of your door. I was going to do this entirely with hand tools. I'd probably drill a few holes here with a stop to get my depth, and then take a big gouge and go across the grain, and then a router plane. And you might want to make yourself one of these, which makes life a lot easier. This is just a straight stop on this end, and then a set of wedges on this end. And one of these wedges has a bevel on it, so it can't pop out. It's undercut this way. So this sits in here, and you just set it in there and tap it, and it'll hold it down like you work on. It's just really simple. And you can flip it around left and right really easily. You don't have to clamp it, so you don't have to worry about making any marks on the surface. I backed it off at the tail. You don't want a square edge here because it'll dig into your ground. So this is the curve that's going to be here, right? Like that, like so. And so what I did was, using the same principle that you want your fence to prevent your scraper from digging up the work that you're keeping. So it's fenced on this side. So I've got it fenced here, but it's scraping on the other side over here. This way, I can't go past my line. It's impossible to go too far that way, right? And I've just set it a little bit shy this side of where I want it to be. So I'll go down here, and I've got it roughed out. And I'll scrape this curve on the other side. When that stops cutting, so I'm a little shy of my line, like this side of my line by maybe 64th, then I'll just adjust my cutter to where the cutter is now. Now I'm just going to move it over a little bit. And I'll hold it up here, eyeball where I think it's going to, where I think it needs to be. Got to be careful, because if you go beyond your line, you've gone beyond the curve of your arch at the top. I'll roll it towards me until it starts to cut. And so that will give me a really nice edge. Now I'm going to back it off and make like a little transition into the bottom here. So now it's transitioning into the bottom here. So this block's going to be mounted on the back of the door. But I want to know, first thing I do is I drill for my pin. So I'll set this to the center of my pin. I'll make a mark that's going to be the center of my pin. On this one, I'm putting the pin right on one of the center of the second drawer blade. So I'm just figuring out where to place the lock in the back of the door. Right? So once I figure that out, I'll take this and I'll just hold the lock on the edge and I'll press it down. I'll take a drill. So now, the beauty is I can set that guy right on there. Now I can mark where I want this to be. So that's where my lock plate on this side is going to go. And then I'll set my marking gauge for this distance. I'm going to set it flush, so I'm just setting my marking gauge right to the full thickness of the edge of that lock. There. And I'll set this in, take a guess at the depth. there, that's gonna be my depth of my lock. So now I've got the space that my lock's gonna sit in. Got it scribed out all around. So I'm gonna chop this in. So you want, if you're going to use router thin, you want to adjust it to the thickness of your plate, which is pretty thin. Hey, look at that. So the ring going both ways, of course. Finish it off with a chisel. Take a little bit more off. So I'll get that down to the thickness of my plate. It's not very deep.
Just the thickness of that brass.
Whatever your brass is. Sometimes you have to adjust it. If your pin doesn't line up just right.
Of course, if we're making 8 of these, it'd be worth making the template.
You make them in.
If you're going to make 8 of these cases, it'd take time to make
Or
the template.
8 or 5 cases and 8 doors. I tried all morning to think up a way to get around that mistake I made.
Did it end up being too high? Is it, the shell was too
No,
high?
it's too low.
It's too low.
But if I scribed it where it was supposed to be, then I would have this big groove going through where my shell would be.
No?
It looks figured, but it's just a big swirl. Green goes the other way.
Get used to it, you can do it like
I like those little routers, they're pretty good.
useful at times.
Most of the time I like doing things by hand because I can really see what I'm doing.
Your marker, the case, the inner.
The workings, the steel
Yeah.
blocks,
Right.
right? And
Yeah.
so I need to cut out some more now. And on the front I have to cut down the depth of the box. And I'll cut out,
Like doing the duct tape.
cut out a bunch of it, and then just chisel out the rest. You can route this out too. So I'll just chisel it down. Almost. And now when you get nice.
Put on steel strip.
Yep.
Why?
Work with the look.
17th century still, I like it. So I've got this down so it fits, and the last thing you do is these little corners that you've been worrying about the whole time. The inside here, you knock them off because the brass is bent. And it's not a sharp inside corner. So if you're wondering what's holding it up, that's what was holding it up. Blade of the key. So, I'll make a little mark there. They're not good for much, I'll tell you. That's for a bigger shell, I think, but that's the idea.
That's all you glue.
That's all you glue down. To snap, and then you just kind of let it rest for a minute and just work your way and it'll come right. And on the underneath of my shell, I took it and I took a scraper and I scraped out most of the center of it. Just to shape it.
Yeah.
So that the center was a little hollow and it just touched on the edge. I took my granite stone that I've got, one of those machinist stones, or you could do it on your saw table, and I took some 400 paper and I just laid the paper down, I took the shell and just pushed it across the paper. So it showed me where any high spots were. I just push it across the paper a few times, or you can hold the shell and pull the paper underneath it, and it'll true up the back of it so that it's nice and flat. You don't want it to rock. So once you get your shell so it's sitting there nice and flat, then you put that tape on it, open it up, take some glue, and I just put a little stripe of glue around the perimeter of it. I'll mark a line down here and I'll index it from the edge of the case. Because this line is something your eye is really going to be able to follow. And I like doing stuff without dealing with numbers, because if you drop a quarter of an inch or an eighth of an inch somewhere in your figuring, you can make a pretty big mistake. Just do it with reference like this, you're going to be good. So there's one of them right there. And then I'll swing this over. That one's going to be over here. There's that one. There's that one.
Start anytime either. Is that just a nail?
It's an old broken off.
This was me.
I would be thinking, I was just wondering what the bigger one.
So when I'm drilling from the front, I drill the drill backwards first, so it starts its hole without ripping. And then I'll go forwards. So I slip that in. Now, if the bail's hanging up like that, well, first of all, you want to take something in. Just bend it. You don't want it to stick, right? And that's that. Your nuts on the inside. And the back in here right now,
Oh, you picked nice.
there's just barely enough. So what you want to do in that case, if there's just barely enough, take a gouge on the inside. You just cut around that nut, around the hole a little bit, a little oversized, so that you've got space to get it on.